Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me today as we recognize our veterans for their unwavering service to America. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the Department of Energy's third annual Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Opportunity Day. My name is Nicola Ohebu with Department of Energy's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, and I am pleased to be your Master of Ceremony. On November 11th, across this great country and throughout the world, Americans honored our brave fighting men and women who for more than 230 years have underwritten our freedom by their duty, honor, and selfless service. We recognize that all our veterans, you in the audience, have given something of themselves to this country, and some have given all, laying down their lives to defend the freedom we hold so dear. Today, as we reflect on the blessings of our liberty, let us never forget that we cannot rightfully celebrate the joy of our freedom without remembering the great price paid for that freedom. Thank you all for your sacrifice and time in service. While we realize everyone is highly connected to their cell phones and may not turn them off, we kindly request for everyone to silence their cell phones and electronic devices. For your convenience, there is Wi-Fi accessibility in the auditorium and cafeteria. To connect, simply select DOE guest from the list of available wireless networks. Enter the password energy.wireless when prompted. That is ENERGY.wireless. The Department of Energy is a secure building, and attendees are granted access only to this auditorium. Please do not wander around the building. Also be sure to wear your security visitor's badge above the waist at all times. Restrooms are located across the hall in both directions. Please note this is a full session, although it might not look that much, and most seats will be utilized. We value your questions and vow to make this time together as conversational as possible. In order to facilitate an orderly discussion, please walk to one of the microphones and ask your question. If you haven't already done so, please stop by the registration table in front of the auditorium and obtain a flyer on DOE's upcoming annual 2020 Small Business Forum and Expo, which will be held in Charleston, South Carolina. Additionally, copies of DOE's acquisition forecast and the Small Business Program Manager's Directory are available. In the event of an emergency, there are 2 exits located in the front of the auditorium. Please follow the signs to the nearest exits. We will be breaking for lunch approximately 11:45 a.m. Lunch will be from 11:45 to 1 p.m. After lunch, we will reconvene in the auditorium for the one-on-one matchmaking sessions. The matchmaking tables will be designated for each DOE program office, federal agency, and advocacy group. Okay, this is the end of my housekeeping notes. At this time, please help me welcome Ms. Patrice Carthern and the United States Army Honor Guard for the posting of the colors and singing of the national anthem. Please stand for the posting of colors and singing of the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail as the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right shoulder, arm. Colors turn, mark.
A big round of applause and thank you to United States Army Honor Guard, as well as Ms. Patrice Carthorne for the DOE's Office Economic Impact and Diversity. You may be seated. Thank you. At this time, I would like to introduce and welcome Mr. Charlie Smith, Director of the Department of Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, to the stage. Charlie.
Thank you, Nicola. A small business program managers directory up here. These are all over the place. Morning. Welcome to the Department of Energy. It's our third annual Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Opportunity Day. And there are a lot of veterans with us here today. And I'm privileged on behalf of the Department of Energy to thank you for your service. And for the SDVOSBs who are here today, thank you for your continued service in helping the Department of Energy meet our missions. It was a great weekend. Wasn't it? Temperature was great. The Redskins didn't play. I actually enjoyed these last 3 days. There's a couple individuals here in the audience that I'd like to recognize. Here with us this morning are two of the most accomplished procurement officials here in this city. The two individuals, I believe, are our federal government's two best senior procurement executives, and the gentleman most responsible for energy's increasing utilization of SDVOSBs, DOE's John Bashista, and NSA's Keith Hamilton. Thank you both for being here, gentlemen. I had the pleasure of speaking last week at the Acquisition Management Workshop they co-hosted. I thought it was a great event that was put together. I think it's a testament to the agency's commitment to small business that I was allowed to address two sessions, well attended. Gentlemen, I thank you for our partnership, and I only ask that you keep it up. Thank you. The OSDBU staff is also here with us today, and I'm sorry, we overbooked this room, believe it or not, and well, more for the rest of us as it goes. But I knew when I woke up this morning that the rain was gonna have a little effect on how full we got this place. But I think we got a great agenda nonetheless. The OSDBU staff with us here today, Nicola, who you've already been introduced to, a veteran herself. We have the deputy, Christy Jackwitz, is here. Camille George, Brianna McLean, Jenny Crone, Anita Anderson, who put this event together, Katrina Lee, Darren Lurie. So, I encourage you today, there's going to be a number of breaks. This is an opportunity to grab some one-on-one time with the staff, and they will be available throughout the day to take one-on-one discussions. Several of our OSDB folks are veterans. Paul Ross and Jim Green, unfortunately neither of those two individuals here. Katrina Lee, another veteran. So, we at the OSDB staff, and in a larger sense at DOE, 38% of DOE's federal employees are veterans. So this agency understands well the value of veterans and veteran-owned small businesses. I don't think it's a secret. I'm going to show you a couple slides. I want to talk a little bit about, because every time we do one of these events, there's always some tough questions. I'm going to try to head a couple of them off before I get put on the spot without warning. I don't think it's a secret to small businesses that DOE has not met our 3% SDVOSB goal that the Small Business Administration establishes for all federal agencies. But procurement numbers are showing that this administration, service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses are being used more than ever before. And during this administration, our contracting activity with small businesses has increased dramatically. Some numbers, I like to sprinkle numbers in whenever I talk, so those of you who don't see me a lot, be grateful. Those of you who have heard these numbers too much, I apologize. In fiscal year 19, DOE spent over $33 billion, and close to $8 billion of that was spent with small businesses. And that $8 billion in fiscal year 19 is up from $7 billion with small businesses in fiscal year 17, and up from $6 billion in fiscal year 17. That's prime and subcontracting. DOE is spending more with SDVOSBs than ever before. This is chart 1, as we call it in my notes here. But this is prime contracting activity. Shows $4.9 billion was spent in fiscal year 19 in prime achievement with small businesses. That's up from $4.1 billion in fiscal year 18, and that was up from $3.7 billion in fiscal year 17. Veteran-owned small businesses are shown over on the left side of this chart. Excuse me, my left, your right. Blue is fiscal year 17, green is fiscal year 18, purple is fiscal year 19. The agency continues to improve its socioeconomic performance. Its spending as SDVOSBs has increased dramatically. Fiscal year 19, $451 million, up from $340 million in fiscal year 18, up from $259 million in fiscal year 17. Just for dimension, to dimension this, the last 2 years have seen an increase in small business spend of 32%. With SDVOSBs, that increase is 74%. It's more than just a consequence of spending more money, which we are. We're doing more contracting. This here's chart 2. It shows our percentage increase. We were gold last year at 11.65% by the Small Business Administration. We spent in prime achievement 17.49% in small business spending. It's up from 13.75 in fiscal year 18. And with SDVOSBs, our percentage increase continues to climb. 0.96 in fiscal year 17, increased to 1.1 in fiscal year 18. In fiscal year 19, we did 1.6. Again, that's still below the 3% established goal, but if this trend continues, we will be meeting that goal within the next 3 fiscal years. Darren, if we can go to, it says chart 3 here. Thank you. This chart here shows small business contracting actions over the past 3 fiscal years. Again, blue is fiscal year 17, green is fiscal year 18, purple is fiscal year 19. I think it's important to note that in fiscal year 19, DOE had over 92,000 SDVOSB prime actions, which was nearly 28,000 more than the agency had in fiscal year 17. It's an increase over the last 2 years of 43%. As you can see, there's been a very significant increase in SDVOSB contracting actions, and though not directly related, this is strong evidence that DOE is employing more new small businesses as contractors. DOE is spending more with SDVOSBs than all but 4 of our sister federal agencies. And we're still climbing towards the 3% goal. And there's a chart here that I spared you. My staff couldn't quite understand what I was trying to say with it, but it had to do with the rate of our increase as compared to other federal agencies. And if you'd like a copy of the chart, I'm sure we could get it for you. But the truth of the matter is the chart would demonstrate that DOE is growing its engagement with service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses faster than any other federal agency. I say all that just because I wanted to set the stage today. We have a lot of staff here. Our 2 senior procurement executives have been thoughtful enough to spend the morning with us. And the numbers are showing that we are committed and succeeding at increasing our engagement with SDVOSBs in meeting DOE's missions. I think we have an exciting agenda today. We have a great speaker coming up here shortly, Wayne. A couple great Q&A sessions. I encourage you to ask the tough questions at those sessions. Just if you could direct them to my staff before they come to me, I'd be grateful. We've accumulated some upcoming opportunities that are on our acquisition forecast that's been printed out. There are a number of small business program managers I see sprinkled throughout the room. Again, I encourage you to corner folks for one-on-ones. There's also a matchmaking session at the end of today. I'm grateful to all the program elements who've stepped up and volunteered and are going to be attending that. I promise you it will be an interactive day. I think today's going to be a great day. I thank you for braving the weather. I thank you again for your service, your continued service, and I hope to have a meaningful and productive day. Thank you very much.
Now, at this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Wayne Gatewood, Jr., retired United States Marine, founder and president of Gatewood Group, Limited Liability Corporation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gatewood to the stage.
I've got to speak through this mic. I've also got a script here. They told me to stay on script. The last time I spoke here, they yanked me off the stage. You know, you ask a Marine a time, he's going to tell you how to build a clock. Can you hear me from here? Yes, well, first of all, I want to say how great it is to see you all here today. My heart always feels good when I'm with my sisters and brothers. We're like-type people. We understand service. We're committed to excellence. So it's great to be here. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about how I got started in my business and give you some pointers. And for those of you that already know me here, don't call me on my lies. Boy, that light is bright. Having graduated from high school at the age of 17 from Benjamin Franklin High School in Rochester, New York, I joined the Marine Corps in June of 1966, some 53 years ago. I served 21 years in the Marine Corps, to include a 13-month tour in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969. When I left the Marine Corps, I was very naive, folks. I don't know how many of you served a full career, but I got out, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something that was productive. I knew I wanted to make a difference, not only in my family's life and my life, but in the lives of others that I touched, just how I believe I had touched positively those young Marines that work with me and about me. I didn't even know how to dress, friends. I don't know about you. You probably have if you're not a retired military person. I had worn dress blues and dress green uniform from age 17. When I reported to my first job at NASA Space Station Freedom Program Office for a contractor that I joined up with, I showed up in a brown corduroy jacket with an orange shirt and an orange tie with orange socks. I had arrived. It was then that a wonderful lady at NASA office looked at me and she said, "Welcome, Mr. Gatewood. By the way, you look like a cantaloupe." How dare that civilian talk to me like that? That very week, she brought to the office an Esquire magazine and said, "I want you to read this and look at the pictures." So I learned how to dress. When that company lost its contract, I went on to another small federal government contract firm and took on business development and program management services, dealing with people. We should know how to do that as veterans. We work in battalions and companies and squadrons and regiments. Mao Zedong once said, "The revolutionary swims in a sea of people." I will tell you this right now, the small business owner must swim in the sea of people. You must network every day. At any rate, I enjoyed this work, and I brought in quite a bit of revenue for the company owner. It was at this time that I spoke to a friend of mine and told her that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Well, she looked at me and said, "A what?" I said, "Entrepreneur." She said, "What the hell is that?" And I said, "You know, one of those people that own their own small businesses." And she goes, "Oh, it's entrepreneur." So now I are one. I mean, I was naive, folks. What I had was a solid heart, a solid spirit, and a desire to move forward. So I went out and got some really ugly cards. I mean, ugly business cards. They were $5 for a box, and got incorporated as an S corporation. I also got a small loan from my dad and started the company with just $600 for office supplies. I was so happy I'd started a business. My in and out baskets were fruit bins that the neighbor had thrown away that I scrubbed down with Ajax. But that was it. I had nothing. Finding out that I had started a business, although I was not competing with his company or doing anything for my company on his time, the owner of the company that I worked for approached me and said, "I understand you own your own small business now." I said, "Yeah, but I'm not doing anything with it. You know, I'm loyal to you till I get ready to move on. I'll let you know." He said, "No, that's not good. You work for me 24/7, buddy, and you got a choice. You either work for me 24/7 and give up that company, or you don't work for me at all." Oh, you don't threaten a Marine. Oh, that minute I went back to my office and typed up my resignation. I had faith, and that was faith at work. Of course, my former wife told me that wasn't faith at work, that was stupidity. Just keep the checks coming. And there I was, a cantaloupe, an entrepreneur with ugly business cards and no income but from my Marine Corps retirement check. God in heaven, what did I do? I looked around my house, the bills were coming. I didn't have any contracts. What did I do? Keep the faith. But wait a minute, there was something greater at play, my friends. There was an adventure to be had. There were dreams to be fulfilled. There were 21 years of leadership experience, of managerial and organizational experience. And there was a burning desire, the drive to own my own business. And so I got up off my ass and went to work. And it was hard indeed, my friends. I wrote my own proposals, came up with competitive costs, especially competitive indirect rates, and that's what you have to do, and won a small award here and there. And as I discovered that without hard work and smart work and perseverance, there would be but limited success for me. This was similar to what I had heard in the Marine Corps, and I'm sure what you hear in the military. The more we sweat in peace, the less we bleed in war. This business is not for everyone, my friends. It's not for the weak of heart. There are times when you will ask yourself, what am I doing? But if you have perseverance, if you have capability, it will come together. Know that. This is commitment at work. So here I was, moving ahead at a slow but steady pace, with some success and some disappointments, when in 1999, Public Law 10650, the Veterans Entrepreneurship and Small Business Development Act, came to be. And I was happy it did. I had been working with the Vet Force for some time, and we had pushed for this bill and for follow-on bills as well. And I'm not sure how many of you have ever read Section 101 of this law. So can I take a minute to read it to you? Okay. And I want you to go back and look at it from time to time. Section 101, the Congress findings. Veterans of the United States Armed Forces have been and continue to be vital to the small business enterprises of the United States of America. In serving the United States, veterans often face great risks. To preserve the American dream of freedom and prosperity, the United States has done too little to assist veterans, particularly service-disabled veterans, in playing a greater role in the economy of the United States by forming and expanding small business enterprises. Medical advances and new medical technologies have made it possible for service-disabled veterans to play a much more active role in the formation and expansion of small business enterprises in the United States. And for me, subparagraph 5 hits my heart. The United States must provide additional assistance and support to veterans to better equip them to form and expand small business enterprises. They're enabling them, us, to realize the American dream that they fought to protect. That's the spirit and intent of that. I take it very seriously. Thus, it is imperative that we do all we can do to realistically present our capabilities if we're going to flourish in this enterprise, if we're going to flourish under this program, if we're going to flourish as small businesses without any certification and verification, to establish sound project and program management processes, to be cost competitive, and to house capable and professional employees. And if we do not have them, to know from where we can get them, because we'll never know when we're going to be called for surge-type activity. We must also be able to respond to RFPs with creative and responsive technical and managerial proposals that offer up competitive and reasonable costs. And most important, we must come to know, to understand, and be familiar with the laws governing federal government small business contracting arena in which we operated. If we fail to do so, my friends, there are consequences, and it's on us. Actually, while I was in business, I compared being in business and being a business owner with preparing to go out on a military operation. For instance, would we deploy troops to engage a known enemy encampment without the gathering of available intelligence? We would send out reconnaissance teams to estimate enemy strength. weapons, terrain, weather for enhanced air support, and so on and so forth. Thus, the gathering of as much intel as possible would hopefully save the lives of our troops and lead to mission success. Planning. It usually results in the greatest margin for victory, for success. Therefore, knowledge and planning are key to your success. And the same scenario, in a less dramatic way, of course, is relative to the way we operate and manage our companies. We must be aware of those things that are pertinent to us as business owners, those things that can break us if we fail to learn the terrain, so to speak. Things like the FAR, Part 31, Contract Cost Principles and Procedures, Part 16, Types of Contracts, and more, so we can reasonably be sure that our proposals do not contain faulty costing, and that we are fully aware of the risk inherent in certain types of contracts, such as firm fixed price, cost plus, time and material, and so forth and so on. You need to know these things. Not one of your employees, not one of your senior staff. This is your company. You need to know it. If we fail to learn and employ the rules of engagement in the business world, that contract that we win might actually be the one that puts us out of business. Ignorance is no excuse. This is knowledge at work, my friends. And once we know the rules, how to maneuver, how to team, how to subcontract, and how to prime to our benefit, there is no reason whatsoever that we cannot compete with large primes, provided we truly have the capability and the experience to do so. Case in point, there was an instance when Quality Support Incorporated, that was my first business. I had it for 27 years. This is the one I started with $600. There was an instance when Quality Support was one of a number of task order participants of a large contract, an IDIQ contract. There were many companies involved. The government released an RFP, however, for the follow-on contract that stipulated there would be only one awardee to take on all the tasks. I'm not going to name some of the primes that were on that IDIQ, but you will know the names if I say them. Well, Quality Support ended up winning that contract as a prime while competing with some of these large and tenured big businesses. Yes, we veterans can do much more than people think, my friends. We can do much more because we're more fluid. We're able to maneuver quickly. We're able to get the services done faster. Our program management is more streamlined. We're not top-heavy in organization. We have these capabilities. Use them to your benefit. We can provide work more reasonable cost in a more timely fashion. Never doubt yourself. How many Marines are out here? All right. How many Navy? Okay. Air Force? All right. Is there another one? Army? You guys in that ooh stuff. It was the Marine Corps that came out, rah! It's just like that color guard coming down you. Up. When I was in, it was, I choke. Well, don't get me started. Sorry, Charlie. Never doubt yourself. Find a way to adapt and overcome. Never feel sorry for yourself. Get your capabilities and your costs in order. Polish up your business development activities. Prepare insightful and competitive proposals. And there is no reason why you cannot compete in any market with anyone. Stay positive. By the way, every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must outrun the fastest lion, or it will be killed and eaten. Every morning in Africa, a lion wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the slowest gazelle, or it will starve to death. It doesn't matter whether you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be running. Starting and growing a small business can seem daunting in many ways, my friends. I know that, you know that. Of course, I know it personally. For me, I stayed as positive as possible by keeping the company of positive people, my fellow veterans in particular, by doing volunteer work, by feeding the homeless, by giving back and giving thanks for all the opportunities that were mine in this great country in which we live. I also had the company of an ever-present higher power, and for me, it was important that I maintain an attitude of gratitude at all times, an attitude of gratitude that sustained me in the early years and throughout my 27 years as the quality sport owner. And it is gratitude, my friends, that leads to a positive and appreciative and more joyous outlook on life in general. And what I discovered was that with a more cheerful disposition, with a positive attitude, I was received in the same light by those that I sought to seek work from. Let's face it, my friends, people do business with people they like. Let me say that again. People do business with people they like. It's that simple. And regardless of the state of your business, a genuine smile and a sense of appreciation will go a much longer way than a frown, than complaining, or an unpleasant disposition. So always find time to give, my friends. Give back. Say thanks. And smile. There are many things we learned while in the military, things like you can delegate authority, but you can never delegate responsibility. Is that it? Is that what we said? Yeah, right? Okay, all right. As business owners, the responsibility is yours to steer the ship on a straight and narrow course. It is you that sets the tone and the climate of the company. It is you that establishes good morale amongst your employees, a level of morale that brings forth technically superior and professional performance from your staff, efforts that are indeed appreciated by your customers. Leadership is the key to success as well. And I'm sure you may have heard this little quote. There are those that make things happen. There are those that watch things happen. And then there are those that wonder what happened. Which one are you? If you're sitting in this room today, you better be the one that's going to make things happen. It's your responsibility. There's no doubt in my mind that you shall make things happen. As business owners, we keep our companies running smoothly and efficiently through the employment of sound leadership and insightful management practices. I recall one contracting officer's technical representative asking me, Mr. Gatewood, how do you keep your employees so motivated, disciplined, and efficient? Well, I'm pretty sure that many of you could have answered that question. But the basis for my response was all about leadership principles. Stuff I learned in the Marine Corps, and I know Mike out there, and some of you have heard it. Know your people and look after their welfare. That's my best. I love that. Set the example. Keep your people informed. Develop a sense of responsibility amongst your employees. Train your people as a team. Ensure that tasks are understood, supervised, and accomplished, and so on and so forth. But let's get back to my old company, Quality Support, Inc. What happened? I started as an entrepreneur, a cantaloupe with $600. What happened to that entrepreneur? Well, we won a number of contracts over the years, 27 years. The last one prior to my departure from the company was in the amount of $54.7 million, just one of a number. We also supported high-level and sensitive federal government activities around the world, things you can do because you've been around the world. You understand priority. You understand mission. You understand sensitivity about how to work in certain communities. You have those talents, those traits. Put them to work for you. We helped to establish and support the Iraqi National Congress, the opposition group to Saddam Hussein. We work with the Kurds, with the Shia, with the Sunni, and many, many others. We opened an office in London, England, to support the Iraqi National Congress. And we supported the first ever United Nations gathering for the Iraqi National Congress leading up to the war in Iraq. We also supported and helped plan for the 2 serious Bosnia-Kosovo elections. Very sensitive activities, very worthwhile, and I enjoyed handling those requirements. I personally enjoyed it. And at each and every step, we sought to employ as many veterans as possible. And after 27 years in business, during December 2016, I sold quality support to a fellow enlisted member, a retired Navy Master Chief. Couldn't find any Marines. Mike, where were you? Retired Navy Master Chief, who I believe may be doing some 29 million in business just this year alone. So you're doing quite well with the company. My friends, as a fellow veteran, a person that was in your shoes for 27 years as a small business owner, I ask you to please cover your 6. Do you all know what that means? Cover your 6 o'clock? Is there anybody here that doesn't know that? Okay, I hope not. And watch your flanks, too. They're flanking movements, okay? Never, ever sign a business document that you do not fully understand yourself. Never. I don't care who is asking you to do it. Get an attorney and let your attorney, someone that's familiar with business practices and laws, read it before you sign it. Please do that. I recommend that you never take a shortcut in anything you do as a business owner. It's the fastest way to get somewhere where you don't want to be. I recommend that when you are a part of a teaming and subcontracting arrangement, that you do your damnedest to ensure that you do receive an agreed upon work share after contract award. Make it happen. Put it in writing. I stayed away from many task orders because I could not get a guarantee from those bigger firms that I would in fact get certain work. I ask you to be very careful of those parties, regardless of pretexts, that may be seeking to use your service-disabled veteran-owned small business status for their gain. Don't be a rent-a-vet. Unfortunately, they're out here, my friends. If you know of them, report them immediately. I ask you to understand the rules of affiliation. Be very careful. Cover yourselves. Be known as a company that has integrity in all instances, that takes care of its people, that provides timely services at reasonable costs, that gives back to its community, that hires as many fellow veterans as possible, that knows that it is more than the money that makes a success, but rather it is that which is resident in the heart that matters. And that's what veterans are about. We veterans know of these things that are intangible, but not seen, but felt. There is a spirit about us, we veterans, and of us, that makes us a tribe of sisters and brothers. And our souls are interwoven through our service and through the sacrifice of others that have worn the uniforms. Enjoy your day today. The Department of Energy, Charlie, Christine, may be structured differently than most other departments, and to this end, you have to be aware of energy's needs and in what instances you might offer up your services. But Energy is seeking as many opportunities as possible to do business with we veterans. And so we thank DOE, Charlie, Christine, for hosting us here today. So this entrepreneur is finished. I'm finished talking to you. Get out there and do what you have to do starting today to make it happen. No excuses. None. It's up to you. God bless each and every one of you, and I hope everyone had a wonderful and peaceful Veterans Day And for my Marines, I hope you had a great 244th birthday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gatewood, for the insightful remarks. Thanks. Now, at this time, we have the opportunity to hear from Ms. Thalia Purier, Program Manager of MiraCorps. Please welcome Ms. Purier to the stage.
I was gonna say, while she's miking me up, Mr. Gatewood, where'd you go? You still here? And I think your first business outfit would be on trend today. Thank you. Good morning. Okay, before we get started, we just want to give a few quick expressions of thanks. So we want to thank first our boss, the owner and CEO of our company, Cynthia Miracle, for extending to us the opportunity to speak on her behalf today. To Mr. Charlie Smith and the DOE OSDBU, we want to say thank you for your continued support to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. And to all of you, thank you for your service and for your continued representation of us in the small business community. So thank you. Okay, so now I want to take you on a journey back in time. It'll be a quick journey, trust me. So imagine the year is 2008, and the owner of MiraCorps, Cynthia Miracle, gets a call one morning. And the call is from a local contracting officer. And he's calling, presenting Cynthia with the opportunity to present MiraCorps' capabilities for a contract. Of course, Cynthia jumps at the opportunity, but it was that day. So she gets ready, she gets her material together, she jumps in her car, and she heads to the location. She gets to the expressway, and the traffic is backed up for about 30 miles. Now, this was totally unexpected. So it's a hint that it was not in the Washington, D.C. area, right? So Cynthia makes the decision to get in the HOV lane because this opportunity was so important that she didn't want to miss it, and she was willing to risk getting a ticket. So she gets in the HOV lane, and she makes it to the location on time. She walks in, and flustered, arms full of her material. Of course, the panel were a little bit surprised that she actually made it on time, and to be honest, not very enthusiastic that she made it on time, but she was there. And Cynthia looks around the room, and there are 2 or 3 other companies being represented there, and they all had a team of people. Human resources, managers, all kinds of resources if they needed help during their presentation. But Cynthia was alone. Much like every startup starts out with just one person. So it was Cynthia's turn to present, and she did. A little bit nervous, but she presented, and her presentation was over. At the end of the day, they made the announcement, and MiraCorps didn't win the award. I'm joking. MiraCorps won the award. You think I would have told you that story if we didn't win? Yeah. So MiraCorps won the award. And that award happened to be the WAPA DSW contract. And ironically, he's not here today, but Mr. Byron McCollum actually was one of the panelists on the board that day. Mr. McCollum is the WAPA Small Business Manager. So why should you trust us when it comes to doing business with the DOE? Next slide. So like I said, starting in 2008, we have an 11-year history of supporting the Department of Energy nationwide. During those 11 years, MiraCorps has been nominated multiple years for the DOE Small Business Awards, specifically in the areas of service-disabled veteran-owned small business and women-owned small business. And several of our employees have been awarded safety-specific DOE awards. And satisfactory has become the industry standard today for CPARS ratings. Now, with that being said, MiraCorps has consistently achieved exceptional ratings on all DOE contracts.
So just a quick introduction. I'm Heather Broughton, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development with MiraCorps. I'm honored to be able to address you with Thela today. Not being a veteran myself, however, I work with a team of veterans and for a team of veterans, including Cynthia, our COO, and our president. As Thela was saying, our exceptional CPARs, our involvement in the Department of Energy engagements, and the platform that the SDVOSB has allowed us to have here today and in the past has been really wonderful. So that's just a little bit of background on MiraCorps' relationship with the Department of Energy. Some of our Department of Energy contract growth that we've had, so as you see the green circle there, we started in the Desert Southwest region with WAPA, and then we were able to expand, next, if you want to click again, we were able to expand into California with the Western Area Power Administration at the Sierra Nevada region, also in Nevada, and then if you click again, and then this is our growth as it is today with the Department of Energy. So we have about 200 employees nationwide, and so we have a little bit of background, about 11 plus years working with the Department of Energy. So I hope that you find what we have to say today helpful and useful in your doing business with the Department of Energy, because they've been a really great agency to work with.
Next slide. Okay, so we're going to give you 3 key takeaways that's going to put you on the path to doing business successfully with the Department of Energy. Now, we're hoping that you'll leave here today with something that will help you be successful. Next slide. Diversify. You can keep clicking. Understand and know your value. Next slide. So now, diversify. Now, this is something that you're not necessarily going to hear from your customers. This is small business to small business. You want to make sure you diversify. So diversify in customer base. Know your customer and what impacts your customer. Specifically things like site closures, government shutdowns, changes in administration. Know your agency's budgetary constraints. Give you an example. During the government shutdown, a lot of our employees were not able to go to work, but our employees here at Department of Energy were able to continue to work. Know your customer's approach to contractor to federal conversions, meaning are your customers going to hire your employees to be federal employees? Back when MiraCorps won that first award with Department of Energy, the Department of Homeland Security had an initiative called insourcing, where they hired all of MiraCorps' employees and converted them over to federal employees. Now, this would have been detrimental to a small business, and it could have been detrimental to MiraCorps had we not had the award with the Department of Energy. So know what's important to your customer. Diversify your customer base, and although an agency may be your comfort zone, the importance of having multiple customers and serving multiple agencies is critical to your long-term success.
And on that note, one of the kind of popular things that might impact your customer base is a change in administration. We've gone through that 2 times now in the life time of MiraCorps, and just being aware of how different administrations impact different agencies and how that's going to impact your business. And that goes for your customer base, for the type of services you provide, what's going to be funded, and where you really want to be placing your time and effort as far as responding to RFPs.
You're clicking ahead on my slides. Can you go back to the diversify slide for me, please? Okay. Services and products. So know what's going on in your particular industry and what your competitors are doing. You want to know what your customers are buying, and you want to be able to adapt. Not necessarily that you need to, for an example, cybersecurity, which is something that is a focus not only in the federal government, but all over. Not necessarily that you need to be able to provide cybersecurity services, but does your service complement a company that does provide cybersecurity services? So I'll give you another example. With the DSW contract, they expanded from administrative services support into facilities. And because of that expansion, MiraCorps was able to capitalize on that. And because of that, we were able to build past performance in facility support, and then that put us in a better position to pursue other opportunities with other agencies. And the same goes for program management, acquisitions with NASA and GSA.
So one thing that has been around for a little while now, but is trending, is category management, strategic sourcing, consolidation. We're seeing a lot of contracts being consolidated. So kind of along the same vein of diversifying your product or your service offerings, you want to make sure you're aware of the trends. Do you need to team in order to bid on some of these larger consolidated contracts that are going to require a larger past performance? If that's something that you're newer and starting out, it might be a little bit harder to do, so teaming might be the approach that you want to take. But if you have also diversified your customer base and your products and service offerings, it's going to be easier for you to bid and be a service provider on a vehicle.
And location expansion. So you saw the map with the with MiraCorps' footprint within Department of Energy currently. So expanding from within WAPA, the Washington Area Power Administration, starting with the Desert Southwest, DSW, and then Sierra Nevada region, RMR, which is the Rocky Mountain region, and then Office of River Protection, which was ORP. Also, expansion within the task order. So the task order under the MOA, which is the Management, Organizational, and Administrative Support BPA, within fossil energy, which includes this building and our location in Germantown. Okay, next slide. You can go. One more slide. Okay, the next key takeaway is understand. Next slide. Understand your cash flow. I don't think anything is more important than understanding your cash flow. What's coming in, what's going out, accounts receivable, does someone owe you money? Make sure your invoices are correct. Are your customers going to pay on time? If your customers don't pay on time, what's the plan? Are you able to sustain through that period? And don't be afraid to make a decision. Prompt payment, or we'll send our employees home. Is that an option? When payment is late or delayed, do you know that there's a 15-day Prompt Payment Act? Do you get back pay? Is there interest on that? Don't allow yourself to be taken advantage of. And know your limitations. Know your scalability. Are you able to scale? Are you able to ramp up with employees? Infrastructure. Are you able to get money when you need money? Are you able to expand your processes and procedures? Make sure you know compliance law when it comes to employment. And know the cost of borrowing money.
AmeriCorps has been established for 20 years now, and our trajectory of growth to 200 employees has not been completely up and down. We've had a slow and steady trajectory to growth. So I would say that goes in line with cash flow, just understanding what you can handle, building up your cash so that when you are 20 years in, you can give more confidence that you'd be able to scale up more quickly. And I just want to say, as far as on the theme of Department of Energy being a great customer, we have never had an issue with the Department of Energy paying an invoice on time. And unfortunately, that's not the normal or the case always, but we've always been able to rely on them for having timely invoices, and that's never been an issue.
Okay, next slide. You can go to the next slide. Okay, competitive inclusion. Do you want to speak to that, Heather?
Sure, yeah. So I think we covered a little bit about contract language, just understanding a good time to ask questions, if you do have questions, is before the solicitation drops or in the solicitation stage. This is for Department of Energy. This is for any federal contractor that you're providing support under. There's always an opportunity to ask questions. Read the solicitation first, because if it's obvious and it's in bold and red and you're asking that question, then it might not be the best first impression. But just understand what the contract language is, and if you have questions, ask it before you submit your proposal or during the Q&A period. And then with competitive inclusion, know who your competitors are. Keep an eye out for the FBO notices, for the Fed Connect notices. If you really want to do some capture and get ahead, go out on FPDS, and that's the Federal Procurement Data System. And then be aware of who you're competing against. Is this something that I need to team with? And then if something is awarded and you say, hey, I'm a service-disabled veteran, I could have been part of that, reach out, say something. The DOE OSDBU team is a great resource, just to let them know this opportunity is either coming up or it's already come up, and it's definitely something that us as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business can do.
Okay, next slide. And know your value. I want to say this should go without saying, but generally speaking, there are three main relationships you encounter in government contracting: your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your business partners, and your relationship with your customers. Know your worth when negotiating and communicating. If you're a startup, you may feel that you're missing some skills, and that you don't necessarily have all the skills that you should bring to the table. You may not be an expert, yet, however, the fact that you are brave enough to serve a company or to start a company and bring your vision to life means you have everything you need already. I don't know if the new catchphrase now is, you are enough. Have you heard that? You need to know how to read your financial statements. You don't necessarily need to know how to create them, but you need to know how to read them. You need to be able to interpret contract clauses. You don't necessarily need to be able to recite them unless you're Mr. Gatewood. Know your capabilities and what you bring to the table. You've already proven that you have the drive and the fire to be successful, so be confident in your self-worth and your ability to achieve success. This brings me to negotiations. So when negotiating, if your company uses the services of outside vendors, make sure when you're negotiating with outside vendors that you look across different vendors. You don't just always stay with that same vendor to make sure you're getting competitive rates. Know the negotiating terms and conditions of a contract. How protected are you? So when you're negotiating with a bank, what are they using for collateral? Are you risking your personal residence? What's the interest rate? Know if that's a good interest rate. How much are you going to be paying back on that loan over time? And also, when partnering with another company, make sure you get your teaming agreements in writing and understand what that contract says. and what you're obligated to do. With your customers, know what you can and can't do. Sometimes your customers may, with a direct award, ask you to provide a service that you may not necessarily feel comfortable with providing. So know if you can provide that service. Know and follow the regulations. You want to make sure you're following Department of Labor laws, the Service Contract Act, any state-specific labor laws, and know how to communicate what makes you stand out and how you will bring value to your customer. Next slide. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, next slide. So if no one has any questions, I have one for you. Next slide. You knew that was coming. What are the 3 key takeaways? Okay. You can click through the next slides.
And I think these were pretty similar to what Mr. Gatewood had presented. So it's just an additional presentation to kind of drive it home. That these are 3 things that help you to do business with the Department of Energy and to do business across federal contracting. So work together, share these things. It's not a secret. There's no secret sauce. There's no reason to keep it close to the cuff. We want everyone to be successful, and there's obviously room for all of the service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses in the room.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to welcome Mr. Norb Doyle, Deputy Assistant Secretary, Acquisition and Project Management, and Ms. Anne-Marie Bird, who's handling the slides for now. And she's a Small Business Program Manager. Welcome. Norb?
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, it sounds like it. All right, well, thank you. As she said, I'm Norbert Doyle. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Acquisition and Project Management for EM, Office of Environmental Management. And we're actually going to tag team you for the next 30 minutes or so. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to talk for a while. Some people consider it droning on for a while. And then Anne-Marie Bird will come up here, and she's going to talk to you about how you can really get involved in what we do. I'm going to tell you where some of the opportunities are and a little bit of the history, if that's okay. And then as long as we're willing to stay, as long as time allows and as long as you have questions. And then, when you do things like this, after you get off the stage, then there's the after meetings. So we'll be around too. Anne-Marie will be here this afternoon as well. I think some of you might have scheduled one-on-ones with her. I unfortunately can't make that, but we'll see. But I'll stay as long as I can. So we're going to go on. First slide. Ann. So this is, I should say, I'm retired military, so you got to have an agenda and stuff. But I wasn't here first thing this morning, but for all you veterans in the audience, thank you for your service. Appreciate it. I hope you had a nice Veterans Day weekend. Okay, that's it. Next slide. So a little bit of history. Office of Environmental Management. Some of you know that we just turned 30 years old. I have not been with the office all 30 years. I'm actually one of the new people. I've only been here 4 years. But there are some people who go all the way to the beginning. Now, what is our mission? What do we do? Some of the historians in the world in the room probably know about the Manhattan Project, the development of the atomic bomb that ended World War II, or bombs plural, and then the nuclear weapons program. I don't know if I would call them unintended consequences, but they were definitely consequences of the waste trail from the production of nuclear weapons. So we are in business to put ourselves out of business by treating all that waste responsibly. I tell people that when I first came here to interview to come to the department a little over 4 years ago, I said I'm not a tree-hugging liberal, but I can appreciate not having nuclear waste seeping into the Columbia River because we have millions and millions of gallons stored in tanks on the banks of the Columbia River as an example. And these tanks are not designed to last forever. So you can understand. So that's what I like doing it, and we like doing that. So, You can see some of where we do it. Some of the tanks are above ground, some below. We have water issues. We refer to them as plumes in many locations and stuff. So that was the nuclear weapons complex, and we're trying to treat all that. Next slide, Ann, please. We started off with about 107 sites 30 years ago. A lot of people will say the easy ones have been done. Now we're left with very difficult ones, some more difficult than others. The center of the world at this particular moment in my life is Hanford, because we have billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of contracts we're going to be awarding here in the near future. So we're doing that. But we have work across the country, and you can see those sites there. Some are bigger. Hanford, obviously, multi-billions. Savannah River's a huge site. Oak Ridge, big site. Portsmouth, Paducah, not as big, but not small. Los Alamos. And in fact, you might have met, I just mentioned for the historians, Hanford, Los Alamos, and Hanford, Los Alamos, and what am I forgetting for the Manhattan? Oak Ridge, for the Manhattan Project. Those were the 3 sites, and we're still closing sites that were used in the production of those atomic weapons. Okay, next slide, please. Some of the things we do. Now, when I talk to small businesses, if I were a small business owner, I'm not sure I'd want to be in the nuclear, touch the nuclear. Okay, and I can appreciate that. But I want you to put that aside, because a lot of what we do is not nuclear, or when small businesses typically get involved, it's after we've decontaminated and take the nuclear aspect over that. So if you looked at a lot of our facilities, what are our facilities? They're big manufacturing plants that were built in the 50s, many of them. So what do you have there? Even if you take the nuclear out, you got oils, greases, solvents, petroleum type products. You've got asbestos. You may be in the business of being able to help on those matters at a subcontract level. Okay, so please, just because we think we're in the nuclear business, that doesn't mean everything we touch is nuclear. And there are all kinds of sites and services that small businesses can get involved in. So you see what we do. So under transport, if you're on vacation somewhere, and you happen to pass a truck that looks like something like that, in the bottom in the middle, you can tell your family and friends, guess what's in there? That's radioactive waste headed for Carlsbad, New Mexico, where we have our WIP facility, the Waste Isolation Pilot Project. And what it is, in effect, a salt mine, and we take these canisters down, or we unload the canisters, take them down into the salt mine, and dig out rooms, close up that room, seal it, and over time, the salt will encapsulate it, and it'll be there for eternity. So if you're wondering where that's going. It's about a half a mile underground. So that's what we're transporting there, which is kind of a neat little thing. And I will say, though, millions and millions of miles and not a single accident, which is good to know. Okay, next slide, Ann. Oh, and I should say, I believe these slides are going to be made available to you. We're going to go through them really quickly. We have a lot of slides, a lot of information on there, but you can use them as reference points for yourself, okay? So sustainable small business. So you can read that. A couple of things we're very interested in. One, we want you to do real scope, okay? I'm going to put a lot of you aside in a way, because if you're in the body shop type thing, or staff augmentation is the proper word, this is important work for you, and we still do this. But for the majority of you, we want real scope, meaningful scope that you can have as for future past performance, and when you try and get other contracts either at the sub or the prime level. So that's one thing we try to do. Mandatory small business subcontracting goals. So if you're familiar with how we do it, you know that we tend to contract in huge contracts, multi-billion dollars, okay? As much as we would love to see small businesses teaming up to tackle one of our big projects, typically we're not going to see that to happen. So as a mitigating answer to this, what we do is we have mandated small business goals in our contracts. Now, what does that mean? It could be, depending on our history, our prior history and the area where we are, it could be upwards of 50% of subcontracted dollars, we will say, have to go to small business. And then we further break that down into the various socioeconomic categories to include service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. Okay, so that's how we try to mitigate the small business. In fact, we saw a statistic. I'm going to show you some statistics here in a second, but one that was just developed this weekend, and Ann did it, correct me if I'm wrong. First tier primes, small business is at $1.3 billion last year. So that's not an insignificant amount of money going at the subcontract level, okay? Oh, you like that? Oh, good, thank you. You should thank Ann, she came up with the number. But you do the work. Okay, Ann, next slide, please. So here we are, some of our goals and how we're doing. We could always use more. We always want to try and get more, but you can read those and our major NAICS codes. You see consulting, facility support. I mean, somebody's got to cut the grass at our facilities, that kind of thing. Local remediation services, hazardous waste, maybe you're in that area, okay? Next slide, please. So this is how we look in the dollars. So in case you don't know, let me explain M&O. So we have 2 management and operating contracts left. Unlike at NSA, Science, there were a whole lot of M&O type contracts. We only have 2 left. But under special authority granted to the department by Congress, under those 2 subcontract, or all M&Os, but again, we only have 2, our first tier primes under them M&Os count for our subcontracting goals towards the SBA mandated goals, okay? So that's why you see the different colors. So in 2019, total of $571 million of what are considered prime contracting to small business. So you put that on top of the $1.3 billion, it's close to $2 billion. So the small business work. Next slide, please. All right, so now I'm going to talk about some of the major procurements we're looking at. So this is Hanford Mission Essential Support Contract. I kind of refer to it as a landlord type contract up there in Hanford. Tell you where we are on this one. We're dotting the I's and crossing the T's, hoping to make awards sometime very, very soon. So this is one I'd be following if you're interested in work in Richland, following this in the press or however, or award notifications, and see if there's an ability. Now, Anne Marie's going to talk about a brochure that has points of contact that'll help you when we identify the actual winner publicly. Okay, so you can see the kind of stuff they do, but they do not discount this contract does not do the cleanup itself. It provides all the services to the actual cleanup contractors, which we're going to talk about. And many of you, military, sort of say veteran small businesses, kind of like a base ops type contract, to put it in a parlance that maybe some of you are more used to. And they'll have security, fire, mail, cranes that they provide, that kind of thing. Okay, next slide, please. Nevada, this one's under evaluation. This is a small business set aside. So we're hoping to make award sometime in late winter, early spring on this one, but for a Nevada site. Now this is actually a good thing because you hear a lot of people talking about end state contracting. They say, what exactly is end state contracting? And for most people, you're just concerned with the next contract. I don't care whether it's end state or not. But this is really a true end state contract. At the end of this next contract, we hope to be done with Nevada. Now, there'll always be a presence of other parts of DOE there, just not the EM mission. So that's truly an end state one. So let me give a little history, end state contracting, because people still hear this. How do we used to do it before? I said we mentioned, we do contracts, billions of dollars. We'd make assumptions on the state of the ground and clean up 2 years before the contract needs to be awarded. We put out a big statement of work. Contractors get together, spend millions of dollars putting these proposals together. It takes us a year to evaluate those proposals, come out with a 1,000-page source selection evaluation board report that has to go through the approval process. Finally get awarded, you have your debriefs, you survive the GAO protest period, and you start to work, and guess what? The state on the ground is not what you assumed 2 to 3 years earlier. So you have this convoluted true-up process, we call it, to get everything baseline. And then, you know what, the highly technical, and we've seen that the technical that is being proposed is rarely implemented anyway. So we're trying to do things a little different. And when we say end state contracting, it's an IDIQ approach, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity approach. Now this will be for the true cleanup contractors. I mentioned Hanford Mission Essential Support Contract. That'll be kind of like the older way of doing business. But for the new contracts that actually get to the cleanup, we will do it task order by task order by task order. So we think we can be more efficient that way, get better utilization of the taxpayer dollars, reduce risk, and reduce environmental liability in a more efficient manner of doing that. Okay, so when you hear end states, that's what we're actually talking about. But we still mandate, we are still, when it comes to small business, nothing is really changing when it comes to end state contracting. Okay? Next slide, please. Savannah River Paramilitary. This one is under evaluation as well. If you're in security services, there may be an opportunity for subcontracting for you. Hopefully, we'll be making an award in the spring on this one. Next. Hanford 22S Laboratory, another one, kind of, it's under evaluation. We actually had these proposals quite a while, but what's happened to us is work got stacked up at Hanford. And this is kind of the lower priority, and we still had some options remaining on it. So we will not see this one awarded until the other ones. It's a matter of resources, how much resources we can put to each of the contracts. Next one, please. Oak Ridge Reservation Cleanup, another big one. Still determining the way ahead on this one, but I know industry is looking forward to this RFP coming out, because I know because I was in Knoxville and they let me know a couple weeks ago that they were looking forward to this one. But there are a couple of courses ahead on this one that we're evaluating at this time. Next. Hanford tank closure. This is another one of I'll call them the big three at Hanford. Hanford Mission Essentials, tank closure, and but the other one will come up in a sec. Yeah, Central Plateau cleanup contract. Thank you. So this is one. We're getting to the point where we'll start dotting the I's and crossing the T's on this one. As a matter of fact, the team is briefing me this afternoon on their SCB report and the ratings and the evaluation and how those came out. So we're still probably a month to two, probably closer to 2 months to make an award on this one, but we're getting close. I know industry is looking forward to this one. Next, please. Central Plateau cleanup, another one we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's on this one, so hopefully award in the near future. And you can see some of the work there. Okay. This one, this is a little different. This is going to be a nationwide IDIQ contract. And we had it out in draft. We had an industry day. We've gotten lots of comments back. We're adjudicating those comments. I won't make any promises, but there's a possibility we might have two, a small business one and a full and open type one. But we have to see where we're going on this one. But this will be able to be used all around the country. The first task, I'm just curious, has anybody seen this one or familiar with it? So, okay, at least one. And actually, it's a bright light here, so don't look at the light if you're up here. Lawrence Livermore, it's a real task. We anticipate on this one, the first one that'll be priced out is Lawrence Livermore, one of the buildings there in California. So, but it'll be able to be used all over the country to include for Navy nuclear and work for them. Okay, next. In Idaho, this is probably the next bigger one you will see, just because I know where we are in this one. We're hoping to go final on the RFP sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and we'll get this one started. Okay, next. Savannah River Integrated Mission Completion Contract. Hopefully we'll actually have this RFP. Well, we haven't seen the draft yet. We're shooting for a draft in December. So we can get that out there. And I would say, in case you don't know, when we do, and I think it's probably a best practice, not all agencies do this, but we put out draft RFPs, we then have industry days, get comments, and I've sat through some of the comments. Unfortunately, what you get is contractor A will come in, they're at this end of the spectrum. I can guarantee you contractor B, they're gonna be at this end of the spectrum when they come in. So we have to kind of mesh that together, but I will tell you that we look at every comment that is given to us. Okay, and we try to do, quote, the right thing, unquote. Next. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Anne Marie. Here you go, Anne. Thanks.
Thank you, Norb. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for your service. I work at the Consolidated Business Center in Cincinnati, Ohio, with 40 or 44 contracting officers and contract specialists. And we do all of these major procurements for the EM program. So you can imagine we have a lot of very busy people. So there are ways that you can help us, in identifying your NAICS codes, I know that some of this is basic, but we still get capability statements that don't have NAICS codes on them from companies, from small businesses. And that's really important for us when we're doing our market research. And also determine if, you know, DOE purchases what you sell. Take a look at our RFPs that are out there. On all of the EMCBC web pages where the acquisitions are, we have links that go right to the RFPs. So you could see in there what the scope is, and you may not be able to perform the whole thing, but you can see where maybe something that you have might be a good opportunity for subcontracting. Obtain a DUNS number, but spoiler alert, DUNS is going away. Next year, December 2020, it's going to be phased out, and businesses will be required to get a unique identifier for their business when they have their registration in SAM. So what that means for you, if you have a DUNS number already, you'll have to get one in SAM. If not, then you won't have to go through the whole DUNS process. You'll just go to SAM and get your unique identifier when that is phased over. So it's required that you register in SAM, register with FedConnect. FedConnect is our gateway from our contract writing system where we issue all of our solicitations. They go out through FedBizOps and back in to FedConnect, and so that's where industry goes and gets all of the attachments, all of the solicitation portions, and that's where you also file your proposals back to us. So that comes back in right to our contract writing system. So it's very good for you to watch for opportunities too there, and you can sign up just like you do an FBO as an interested party. Determine if your firm qualifies for SBA other certifications, 8A. I saw, you know, some of the companies here, I've spoken to a couple of you this morning, and MiraCorp holds several different certifications, and that's very enticing to us to try to get as much as we can to fulfill our goals and in all of the socioeconomic categories. So do pursue that if you think that you might fall into one of those certification categories. Familiarize yourself with our requirements, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, as well as our forecasts. The OSDBU's office has a wonderful DOE-wide forecast that we're working to even make better. And the Office of Environmental Management also has on their website, which I'll give you a page of websites at the end of the presentation, but where we post all of our requests for proposals and solicitations, and those that are coming up, the TBDs, where we don't know yet when they're going to come out, but it gives you something to keep an eye on if you think that you might be interested in doing that. Explore subcontracting opportunities with the EM prime contractors. Norb mentioned a little trifold, and this is very valuable because it has our subcontracting points of contact with our prime contractors, our large contracts at all of these sites that Norb showed you in his map. So these are the folks that you can reach out to see if there are some opportunities maybe to be a supplier or enter into a mentor-protege agreement with them. DOE has its own mentor-protege program, similar to that, but not the same as SBA's. But we do have our own program, and EM now is requiring that offerors propose at least 2 mentor-protege agreements in their proposals when they're submitting them for some of these larger procurements. It's one more way to get small business involved and increase small business participation in our contracts. And then lastly on this slide, market yourself to the right contacts. The small business program managers are, you know, they're just a wealth of information, and they can guide you in the right directions. They can speak to technical folks about what your company does. They can share your capability statements with all the contracting officers in the organization. So the OSDBU's office also has the directory out there on the table. I would encourage you to pick up that, and that contains all of the points of contact for the laboratories, for our M&O contracts, for our, just our general sites, prime contractors, and for all of our federal small business program managers. Next slide, please. So I'd just like to say that we usually put out sources sought notifications. We do this regularly on all of our procurements, and I can't stress it enough that we don't always get a lot of feedback back from a small business or service disabled veteran owned or hub zone or woman-owned small disadvantaged business companies that, and I think that maybe it might be because you don't think you can do the whole thing. Well, we like to know what you can do. So if you see that RFP come out and there is some portion of work in there that you think that you could do or perform, then please submit a capability statement. Answer the questions. We usually have 12 or 15 questions in there about the solicitation, about the scope of work. If you can, if you know that you think you can perform something, please provide that information to it along with our capability statements. We analyze these, and it really does make a difference on whether or not we're going to set something aside, or if it's going to go full and open. But it also tells us what kind of subcontracting opportunities we might have if we do go full and open that we would expect to see from offers coming in. We do pre-solicitation and pre-proposal conferences. We do community days, one-on-ones. It's a good way to get in front of the acquisition team and our decision makers and introduce yourself and your team. So I would encourage you, if there's one in your area and you can attend it, please do attend those. It's also a great network for teaming and mentor protege opportunities with other businesses that might be looking for somebody to team with, and attend our conferences. It was mentioned this morning, the DOE Small Business Conference is going to be held in South Carolina and Charleston this year in May. That's an awesome conference. I would, for any small business, because anybody is there, our major prime contractors, our small business contractors. They're exhibiting, they're looking for networks, they're looking for mentor proteges, and it's just a great network. So that would be, if I had to choose from all of the conferences that I go to, that would be the one that I think is the most beneficial. And again, build your capabilities at the subcontract level. To start with, we're trying to make better opportunities for small businesses so you can get some of that past performance or experience doing the work that we have at our sites. And lastly on this slide, engage in our supply chain management center. MiraCore mentioned strategic sourcing. It's our strategic sourcing tool that the Office of Environmental Management and NNSA utilize. And we establish goals with our prime contractors each year that they're going to use this vehicle to contract for services and commodities that are general across the complex, so we can get a better price. And it's better for small business because they're looking to meet the small business goals, and and you can just submit your information directly to their website about your company. Next slide. So you're saying, so where can I find all of this stuff? There's not one site, okay? There is not one site. But we do have the DOE forecast page, which we are working on to, make that more overarching and get more opportunities in there. EM has their major procurements page, as well as the EMCBC site, which has all of the ongoing procurements that you saw NORB present. And then our prime contractors have some pretty nice sites. I wanted to highlight a good example is the Four River Nuclear Partnership contract down at Paducah in Kentucky. They have a very good subcontracting webpage, and I would encourage you just to take a look at it. They post up there many different opportunities, and just some general doing business with Fore River. And so if you're interested in that area, would like to see more about that, I'd encourage you to go to that website. Next slide. So back to the Supply Chain Management Center. This is the website for it, where you can upload your supplier profile right there at the site. And what they'll do is they'll take a look at it, and they'll see if it maybe fits within one of their agreements that they currently have, or if there's maybe another agreement for some commodity or for some service that they might want to evaluate different suppliers for and enter into the supply chain. At that site, you'll also find the points of contact for those folks if you wanted to reach out to them. Last year's target for FY19 was 47 million, and we exceeded that. 93 million went to the supply chain from our prime contractors. Next slide. So this is us. This is the EM small business program managers across the United States at each of our sites. Feel free to reach out to any of them. They're all very, very helpful. They can answer questions to you about opportunities, or they can take your capability statement or give you more information on what might be coming down the pike at some of their sites. Next slide. And then these are the sites, that I think are very helpful sites for the DOE, our energy site, our EM homepage, the OSDBU site, small business points of contact, the US.gov. USA.gov is another great site for business opportunities that I wasn't really familiar with, that I found. The PTACs that you should be talking with in your regions, and the system SAM and Fed Connect. And lastly, it's just another plug for our conference, and I will be around this afternoon as long as anybody's here to answer any questions you might have. Please stop by the one-on-ones. I'll be there, and I would very much like to hear what your companies do and get more information from you, and I thank you.
Thank you, Norm and Anne-Marie, for this insightful information. Right at this time, I would like to welcome again Charlie Smith to the stage. At this time, we will take a few minutes to answer questions from the audience. Please be sure to walk up to one of the microphones to ask a question. Okay. So we're going to have a panelist to come to the stage to host a question and answering session.
That was a we. I didn't quite get that. We're going to have Gary Lytek from NNSA. Gary, if you could come on up here. Norb and Anne-Marie, if you could come back up again, and Nicola, if you could come back out. I am prepared to answer difficult questions, but not until this afternoon. I have a meeting that I'm going to have to pop out on. But right now, I encourage you to ask questions. I always love having a Q&A with all these folks about opportunities in EM, NNSA, and how to best engage with us. And with that said, Nicola, I'm sorry, I'm going to do housekeeping. Is that okay? Or you can do it right from there. The microphones are at the corners.
Sorry.
And Norb, don't turn your pocket mic on or you're going to get feedback, right? All right. Let's have some questions. Please.
We are here for you. This is your opportunity, so ask those questions that you always wanted to ask.
Let's see if this one works. Hey, that works. All right.
Good afternoon. Chris Whaling with Synthesis Partners. I'm curious about the mentor-protege arrangements and how best to engage as a small company in the veteran-owned category. Maybe some examples of how to do it successfully, or maybe some ideas on what to avoid as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we have several examples within EM, and I I would almost be able to provide examples of what those agreements look like. They have been very successful with giving, building businesses up, small businesses as mentors, as proteges under these programs. And we've heard very good things. And many of our mentor proteges, the protege then goes on to be a mentor of another protege. So like I mentioned, it's, meeting, networking with these companies and reaching out to them and letting them know what you do and how you can fit into that work scope. Looking at the RFPs, it's very important that you have a knowledge of what that work is going to be so that you can market yourself to prospective offers. Once you've been around in DOE, you know who they are. You know who the large businesses are that get the contracts, and those are the business development folks that you need to reach out to.
And are there tracks for finding veterans to hire and bring up into the mentor protege track in particular?
I'm not familiar, no, I don't believe
Okay.
so.
I want to make sure we've answered your question. I know we were talking about the Department of Energy's Mentor Protege program at this point, or are you thinking about just SBA's?
We'll start there. Oh, yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
interested in SBA as well.
All right. Just the way we're handling it at NNSA. By the way, I'm Gary Lytek again, NNSA's Senior Business Source Manager, whatever title they gave me this day. When it comes to the Department of Energy's Mentor Protege program, usually the first step is you have to pretty much be an excellent player at one of our sites already, because normally the relationship most of the time is between one of our major M&O contractors and that small business. Not always. You can have a mentor also be any large prime, and can actually, at times, I think we're even contemplating letting even a prime small business be a mentor. We haven't finished that one yet. However, most of the time it's between an M&O and that small business. So normally the first step is to be an excellent contractor at one of our sites. Matter of fact, I have Lisa Copeland right there. She's nodding her head up and down. She's the small business program manager at Y12, or Tennessee, okay? And also they handle Pantex. But the idea here is this. You first have to be excellent at one of our sites. Normally then that encourages small business program managers and others to say, with a little bit of mentoring, we can probably take the work scope that you're doing right now and we can probably expand it. And it's not just for your benefit. Believe it or not, we have enlightened self-interest here. We have the ability to be able to say, if we expand your capabilities, it's also capabilities that we can use across the complex. Then you can have a lot of fun as a protege, because guess what? If you have a mentor-protege agreement with one of our sites, you can use that protege agreement across our sites. And another great opportunity for our mentor-protege program, by the way, is that we can do sole source awards up to $4 million. Oh, as many as we want. That's another neat little feature about that. And several of our small businesses have grown exponentially just because of the mentor-protege program. How's that?
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Someone else? Okay.
Good morning. I'm Ed Shannon from Pennsylvania. I'm looking at your spreadsheet here, and I'm looking at a current incumbent. And the entity that I'm looking at, I think I have some familiarity with it. My question to you is, can I call or contact the contracting officer and or the small business manager that's listed here in order to find a name to call in this is a very large organization that's presently the current incumbent? I don't want to send an email to the general headquarters office. I'm looking for a contact to call this entity that's already a current contractor.
Is the person's name listed on the sheet?
It's just the entity's name is on the sheet. And what I'm trying to do is contact the contracting officer specialist or the small business manager and say, I want to contact this entity. Can you give me a name, a phone number, an email address?
That's something that would be able to provide for you. If you look on our forecast, that's
gonna
on
come
the
forward so I
OSBU
can hear you.
website. Oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah, I have trouble hearing.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you look on the forecast, the acquisition forecast on our website, it also lists the point of contacts for each of the opportunities that's listed there. So if it's not here, we can provide you with the information.
Okay, so that would be the contracting officer?
Yes,
Okay, that would be,
and the small business program manager, too.
and both of them?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, that was my question, thank you.
So I guess that's one of your spreadsheets he's looking at? Because I'm in the government, I got all kinds of spreadsheets, right? But, so for EM, environmental management only, Ann mentioned this little trifold. So what we do, and she does a wonderful job keeping this up to date, there's it's full of interesting information, but there are two important aspects, and I encourage everybody to take one with you. One, it has our DOEM, small business people around the country, same people you saw on the slide a few minutes ago. But the other thing, we go another step further, is for all of our large contractors, we have what I call the diversity points of contact. So there is that person who can get you into the right people inside the company that get you into their supply chain. Yeah. Yeah. So this actually has the company person. Listen to it.
I also want to inform everyone that the slide presentations that you saw today, they will be available within 2 weeks on our website. So I saw a lot of you taking pictures, but you will have copies of the slide presentations. Okay.
See if this one works, yes. Richard Greenstreet with Kalani Consulting Incorporated. Question for NNSA. If we're going to be a prime to NNSA, what facility level clearance is required? Is a TS sufficient, or do we need a Q?
And the answer is yes. No, it really does
very
depend.
helpful, thank
No, when it comes to our enterprise, and a lot of people hear about NNSA, and it's kind of its basic mission is the defense applications of nuclear science, and then right away, ooh, nuclear science. No, it can be anything. Really, certain places require the highest level of clearance, sure. Others a little lower, others a little. We do everything soup to nuts. So even if you hear NNSA, don't think everything's nuclear. And actually, a number of our sites are not necessarily requiring that high level of clearance.
I remember when you guys were called defense programs, and it was definitely a Q clearance back in the day. But another question, I think in general for folks, it's changing the subject a little bit. Do you folks, or do your contracting officers or contracting specialists look at SAM and more specifically the dynamic small business databases for research prior to putting out a solicitation?
Yes, in EM, all of our contracting officers use the SBA Dynamic Small Business Search as well as SAM. We also look at FPDS, we look at websites. I take the capability statements that are provided to me from companies, and I have a database that I add those to, so we can search by word, by NAICS, anything when we're looking for a requirement that supplements our market research for EM. And get your...
Yeah, and on our side of the house, exact same thing. I also wanted to kind of sensitize you as far as subcontracting. A lot of the folks here, let's see, I'm not exactly sure how it was stated here earlier, but when it comes to the money that we have in the Department of Energy, you have to think to yourself, where does the money go, right? Well, where's the money flow, and that's where you find your business opportunities. Well, when it comes to NNSA or Department of Energy, most of those opportunities are with our management and operating contractors, right. Our laboratories, our production facilities. I know EM's slowly backing out of that M&O model, but on our side of the house, it's still the most prevalent when it comes to opportunities for small business. Remember, some of our labs and production facilities, they're as large as some federal agencies. And you can think about like a Sandia National Lab. They do $1 billion a year in subcontracting. And about, I think it was 60% of that went to small businesses every year. So don't just think that prime's the only way to go, folks. Subcontracting is a big deal. Matter of fact, I find that their money spends just as well as ours, so you might as well, go both ways with this. And so they also, to answer your question, my long-winded little spiel there, is that one of the things to remember is when they use SAM as well,
Right,
our M&O contractors. Now, you're not required, they can't require to go into SAM, but it makes it easier for them too. So that's why you also want to keep your SAM records up to date, not just for prime contracting, but also for our major subcontract.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
I never asked the question, but from a show of hands, how many small businesses have done work with the Department of Energy? Quite a few. So I see that there are some members in the audience that probably are not familiar with the Department of Energy. And so our structure, contracting structure might be different from other federal agencies. Pretty sure when I was in the Department of Army, the DOD, I never knew what an M&O was, right? So I'm pretty sure some of them are still unsure. What are M&Os? And we're talking about prime dollars and first tier, and you're like, I don't even understand that. Because in the past, we hear the questions. We are not seeing prime, a lot of your small dollar values contract listed in our acquisition forecast. And probably that's another reason, because most of the money is in M&O, the large contracts for prime. And Anne-Marie mentioned supply chain management strategy. You're like, what on earth is that? So you're not seeing the papers, you're not seeing the consumables, the low-level consumables that you're looking for. That's where it is, right? So you have to get on those contracts. It is important that you understand the structure of the DOE so that you better align yourself. So if you're looking for those lower dollar contracts, you gotta look through the M&Os. Because as Charlie showed in his, I think it was slide 3 of his presentation, we do more in subcontracting with the same NAICS than we do with prime. And as Gary said, the money spent just the same with subcontracting as it is in prime. So we entreat you to look throughout the entire DOE complex, large and small, to see where to align yourself and where to get the best bang for your bucks and opportunities. Does that make sense? Great.
Were you going to tell them what an M&O is?
Oh, I was waiting for you.
I was just curious. Oh, you're looking at me? Yes, go ahead. Are you sure you don't want to do this, Nora? Okay. Okay. All right, for you geeks out there, when it comes to M&O contracting, then you go to FAR subpart 17.6, and it gives you all the great little things about what an M&O contract is. But it really is this. Usually it's a team, whether it's universities or major industries, that get together and they create a limited liability company to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to run that particular site. That's what it's really all about with an M&O contract. It's also a unique relationship. And if you look at that FAR subpart I just gave you, 17.6, it tells you about what we are kind of doing. It's not like a normal prime sub-relationship or a prime contract with the federal government. We usually say, this is what we want you to do, and we have like a bunch of milestones, and this is what's going to be done, and but it's pretty much hands off. M&O, it's different. We have a very close relationship, right, Lisa? We have a close. Yes, thank you. I want to make sure. We have a very close relationship with our M&O contractors, and so we work together to determine what it is we're going to get done during the next year. We're going to work together to figure out how it is that we're going to get from A to Z every year. A couple of other unique features about an M&O contract. If you're a subcontractor, what happens normally if you're a subcontractor on a normal federal prime contract? Well, your subcontract usually dies with that prime contract, right? Well, not in an M&O contract. An M&O contract, normally what happens is that those contracts just get carried on to the new winner if we have a change in the contractor, in the LLC. So you don't lose your subcontract just because the M&O changed. That's kind of a big deal.
That's awesome, Gary. Did you guys know that?
That's a big
Something
deal.
Something else new.
That's a big deal. Give me what's another aspect that we usually do at an M&O? Well, first tier sub is always good, but there was a couple other things too, but I didn't think of it. I was expecting them to ask that question, not you, not to set me up like that, but usually, no, that's really what we're all about here when it comes to M&O contracts. Again, every dollar I spend for small business, they spend about 8.
Yeah, Gary, I had Darren put up there behind you.
Oh, yes.
Kind of an illustration of that. We had 4.9, I said earlier, and prime and first tier Mosrick. It's Mosrick that's driving that 4.9. You can see year over year how much the M&Os have contributed to our small business achievement. It's our growth in small business contracting is primarily being driven by the M&Os.
My apologies. Do people know what Mosrick means? Who doesn't know what Mosrick means? Give me a hands. Thank you. Okay. Mosrick, the M&O subcontracting reporting capability. I got that right. Okay, so what does that mean? All right, back around, let's see. This is, all right, Title III. Okay, Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2014, Title III, Section 18.
He's a reference man.
You got to be, but that'll be on the test later. However, that gave us the ability, the Department of Energy, to take credit for our M&O's first-tier small business achievements. That's why Mosrick was such a big deal. Did you know prior to these last, and we're going to come up on 5 A's, I believe, for the Department of Energy. The Small Business Administration gives you a grade every year how well you're doing with small business. Where I think we're going to get our 5th A pretty handily. Prior to that, we had, I think, 4 F's. All right. The reason for the major change was this. And now we're able to, because frankly, when you're moving, all right, here's another thing to think about. NNSA, EM, Office of Science, and EERE, right? You take those 4 together, that's about 90% of the department's budget. It's huge. All right, so when you're thinking about where the money flows, think about that. But then between science, EM, and NNSA, that's where most of this money comes from. And by the way, that's not even all the small business money, because that's just what's being reported through this great little system up through Mosrick, where we're getting our credit. There's probably about another third that we can't talk about, okay? But 2/3 of that small business spend is right up there. And so we're looking, so what does that mean to you all? That means that people like Charlie, myself, we're going to be encouraging our M&Os more and more to do more small business awards, especially socioeconomic awards. That's the big deal. Service disabled vet. So that's why we want to see this graph keep growing. All right, we want to see it moving up. So that's what I got there.
So I'm a small business, and I was listening to your presentation, and you talked about responding to RFIs, requests for information. You talked about sources sought notices, and I saw a couple opportunities that captured my attention. And because I realized that for you to set aside for service disabled, veteran-owned small business set aside, instead of making it full or open or even total small business set aside, I need at least 2 or 3 other small business, service disabled, veteran-owned small business to also compete, correct? And so I went to Doyle and I went to Christie and I say, hey, we have our company and we want to set aside, we would like you to set aside this opportunity for service disabled. And so we had, we talk among ourselves, we had our competitive price, and so we know we were going to provide information that's useful to you. However, lo and behold, and I think we even send information to the contracting officer, lo and behold, the opportunity came out as full and open. What are our recourse? What can we do in the process? Or before it even got to that stage, we were trying to reach out to have them set it aside. Does DOE have anything in place where I can actually do more than just a complaint, but an undue restriction? Is there any way that we can place that information so that we can get justice?
It almost sounds as though you were leading the witness on that one. Like, okay. Let's say after the RFI, the sources sought. Normally during an RFI or a sources sought, you're allowed to ask questions, right? I mean, we're all used to that. And sometimes you're heard, sometimes you're not. And then you see the solicitation come out, and it's not what you were hoping to see in the solicitation. You look at that and say, okay, I've talked to the CO, I provided my information to the CO already, and I kind of talked to other folks, and it's still in the solicitation, it's not the way we want it to be. What do I do next? Well, normally during a solicitation, you also have another Q&A period, right? Always put your question back in there as well. But then on top of that, OSDBU's website has what, it's under your, which tab is it under? It's, no, I know that, but that's
You
hidden.
can go under service, and from under service, you
service.
can
There
drill
we go.
down.
So alleged undue restriction website. And what this does is it gives you an opportunity to say, hey, here's this information. We believe this should go SDVOSB, right? That's what we're here for. And I believe that there are certain maybe requirements in that solicitation that knocks us all out. And I don't think it's actually a realistic restriction on the procurement. And here's why, maybe you can say. You're allowed to go on that website, boom, 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 put all of your information. Oh, by the way, DOE's has got the best one.
That's
All
right,
that's
I
it.
agree.
They do. Matter of fact, every agency is supposed to have one of these, but there's like 3, I think, that actually do. And ours actually will talk you through it. Here's what an alleged undue restriction is. Here's some examples, cases that have actually gone through GAO on whether it has happened or not. Here's the approach that you should take. Here's how you fill it out. And all this other good information that you won't find anywhere else unless you go to SBA's website directly. So you go through there, you fill it out, and this way your information also can be kept anonymous. Yes.
That's right.
Thank you. You can bring this up without worrying about getting beat up later or, somehow hurt. You have then this way the opportunity to put all that information in there. We get to look at it. We get to then send that information anonymously to the CO as well as the competition advocate and all the rest. And so this way your voice can be heard at multiple levels, and OSDBU can help you
As a
with
matter
that.
of fact, we have a good track record because I think we had at least 3 to 4 of those opportunities that were slated for full and open switch to a small business set aside, prime. Okay, so and when I'm saying we're talking about prime opportunities because, as we said, for the M&Os, they're a different beast. So you have to go through their channel. They're just like a prime contractor, and I can't tell a prime contractor how to do their solicitation, correct? But we try to help as much as possible. So when we say that we're doing a lot to advance the small business cause, we're actually doing a lot. So another thing that I know that we do, so we have something called a 4220, a small business review form. So for prime opportunities. So when we have a requirement come to the OSDBU office, we are not just trying to say business as usual. We are literally trying to increase the opportunities to small business. So in the past, we allowed, the proposer, offerer to say, okay, on a $1 million contract, they will do probably a 10% small business set aside, subcontracting, 10% subcontracting. And of that 10%, we might look 50% for small business. That sounds big, right? But then we're saying, hold up. We don't just want 50% off your 10%. We're looking at this requirement and we're saying, of this 1 million, based on what the requirement is, we believe from market research and prior history, small business probably can do what? At least 18% or 20% of the total contract dollars. So that's how we're trying to move the needle or the momentum in your favor. Does that make sense? So that's why Anne-Marie mentioned, when you see requirements coming out, if you still cannot do the full capability of the entire opportunity, you need to still submit information on what you can perform. Based on what you submit to us, it helps us to set the subcontracting requirement for that proposal. Does that make sense? So the more engaged you are with us, the better we are to assist you in your mission to doing business with the Department of Energy. Does that make sense?
Yes. And with that. So you have to do your Master of Ceremonies thing
Yes,
now. So go do that.
We want to thank the panelists for their very engaging and conversational presentation.